Okay, so we're going to move into some table design principles as presented by the Hands-on Data Visualization book. It has a list of initially 5, and then it gives a couple more from a different perspective, and then I've got a couple extra that I just want to add on to here. I just want to note that these are a guidance from certain voices that don't necessarily line up with what you will have to do for your own tables depending on the situation. For example, when you're doing things that are for APA style writing, these particular guidances don't always align. For example, the right-handed, right-aligned numbers is not done in the same way in these examples as they would be in APA style. But in general, these are good guidance for following along. So let's actually look at the table themselves. And these are just their 2 examples of good tables. So making column headers stand out above the rest of the data, that's usually done with, here they have it in bold. That's when you're doing stuff just because that's usually a good way to do it. Almost always it's a line that is distinct. This particular book favors the alternating gray lines. Like APA, we don't do that, but you usually don't need the alternating lines for readability. Usually, like something like this, you don't actually need them in place. But here, number 2 is using that light shading for it. Usually with text, left lining does help visually. Numbers, like in APA, they would actually be centered in the column. So calories, like the numbers would be in the middle of this column, but they would still be right aligned. Avoiding the repetition by placing the labels only in the first row. So you can see like when you have grouped, so you have column headers, and then when you have group things, you put them like that. So we know that all of these are vegetables, for example. Then putting the independent variable at the top and the dependent variables on the sides. So that is, so your IV is either they got the vaccine or they had a placebo shot. This is COVID data. What happened? They were either infected or not infected. If you have any totals, then they always go on the bottom, so you're 100% on the bottom. And yeah, so that was theirs. Could this be better? Yes. While they had figure and table headers here, headers and footers, very much you'd want to have very specific titling to tell us is that this is COVID data. We'd want to know which vaccine was this, all that kind of good stuff. And if you have anything that is like acronyms, then you'd want to define them. Usually like you'll see something like note and then blah, 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 like HODV equals hands-on data visualization, for example. So you always want to make sure that, you know, like in this case, we've got like code, you've got COVID percentages of the population who were infected or not infected, and we've got like the raw number of the count of them. But just reading this, you don't actually know that. Like you have to understand what's going on. So including that kind of information in there is usually, you know, you'd have like vaccine, placebo, then mean sum, or mean and count, stuff like that. So making sure that your tables actually include all the information that they're supposed to include is kind of required. The next part of this goes into the Sparklines, and that's going into another video. I just want to point out right here, because the next video won't have the slides. After I finished the demo for that, I included the link to it, so you should be able to click on this and see the finished one from the demo that I did. I point out in the demo this important key about making sure that when we're using colors like this, that we do want to check for accessibility, so checking it for colorblind issues, so that everyone can actually read your thing. That's always important. That's the whole point, so people can understand your data. And then if you didn't know, what is a Sparkline? Is this tiny chart that summarizes the data for this one single row. So kind of it's designed to show, like, here we've got a trend over time. Like that's really what it's meant for. It's stuff like that. It's not precise at all. There's no scaling points or anything like that. It's just so that you can visually just get a sense of what's going on. All right, so let's get into the demo.